Welcome back, Blueberries, for the next episode of the Blueberry Guide. I do apologise in the delay in episode 4 and 5 coming out. However, as I'm sure you can appreciate, these videos do take time to put together, especially when work and life gets in between. But I'd like to start this video just by saying a massive thank you to everyone that has subscribed to my channel so far. I managed to hit 100 subscribers this week, which when I first started, I didn't even think I'd get one. So I really appreciate the support, and I hope that you continue to enjoy my videos. So before we start, let's just have a quick recap as to what we've covered so far. In episode 1, Frankie Boy walked you through the very basics of Hell Let Loose. In episode 2, we looked at basic defense, and in episode 3, we looked at basic offense. In this episode, we're going to focus on some advanced defense tactics. Now, before we get started, as I always like to say, I am by no means an expert when it comes to Hell Let Loose or these guides, especially when it comes to defense. It's a very, very different role to my usual recon grind. But the great man Jedi came to myself and Frank and said it's time that we help Blueberries out. Pub matches are turning to shit and we need to do something about it. And that's ultimately what we're here to do. Hopefully these videos help you get some little tips or tricks, or even just give you a better understanding of the game and how it's supposed to work. Remember, as always, if you are an expert when it comes to Hell Let Loose, don't be a dickhead. If you see someone new to the game, help them out, or leave a comment below and do your bit to save this great game we call Hell Let Loose. Well, with that said, let's move on to our first chapter of this video, building Blue Zone Garrisons. So firstly, let's look at what the difference between an OP and a garrison is. A garrison is a spawn point in which the entire team can spawn from. These can only be built by a squad leader or the commander, whereas an outpost is a spawn point that's just for your squad, and only your squad leader can build these. So what do we mean by a blue zone garrison? By blue zone, we mean the zone in which is under friendly control. So if we have a quick look at the map here, you can see that this area here is currently under our team's control, hence it being blue in colour. And this area here is under the enemy control, being in red. These two zones have very different requirements from each other as to how to build a garrison. We're not going to touch on how the red zone works for now. We will cover that in episode 5. We're going to purely focus on building in the blue zone. So first things first, before we build any garrison, we need supplies, and 50 of them to be precise. These can come from a supply drop from the commander, a delivery from a friendly supply truck, or the most simple way, simply getting someone in your squad to play a support and drop their supplies.
Enemies on ping. Enemies on ping. I've just seen me. Multiple out there.
Roger.
These different methods of obtaining supplies all have their own benefits and risks that come with them. For example, using a supply truck will give you 150 supplies, but it requires somebody to drive it from HQ, risking getting taken out by an enemy tank or AT. The commander's supply drop will give you 100 supplies, but it's easily detected by the enemy as it falls from the sky. Our support class can only drop 50 supplies. However, they have the added benefit of being close enough to us that they are at less risk of being intercepted by the enemy or detected. The requirements for building a garrison in the blue zone require 50 supplies, which in this scenario makes our support guy the perfect candidate.
As well behind her.
That's a good spot for Gary there. Yeah, these.
Other things worth taking note of when building garrisons is that there can only be a maximum of 8 garrisons on the battlefield at any given time. The commander can dismantle garrisons if he needs to. Garrisons cannot be built within 200 metres of another garrison. And finally, garrisons have to be built within a 50-metre radius of the supplies. So hopefully this has given you a greater understanding of how the garrison system works, particularly when it comes to the blue zone. That brings us on to our next chapter, which is sector control. When it comes to defending a point, there is a common misconception amongst Blueberries that all they need to do is sit inside the strong point and wait for the enemy to get close and try and keep them out. Don't do this. A good offensive commander will simply tell his team to wait outside the strong point, call in one bombing run, wipe out everyone within the strong point, and then tell his guys to move in and start capping the point. By the time you all spawn back in, the point is pretty much impossible to take back. This is a common trend in sides getting absolutely steamrolled within minutes. So how can you stop this happening? Well, it all comes down to sector control. If we wait around for the enemy to come to us, then we will simply become sitting ducks, and it's only a matter of time before they'll take the point. A proactive defence is a great defence. This means actively looking for the enemy, keeping them away from the point as far as possible. Looking for their outposts, their garrisons, and disrupting their approach is going to make it a hell of a lot easier to defend and give you the greatest chance at maintaining control of the defensive point. So let's pull up the map and we can show what we mean by sector control. So if we look on the east side of the map here, you can see that my squad is quite a distance away from the point. Here we're stopping any enemy advance from the east before they even get close to the point. You can see the same thing happening on the west side here with another squad. Now you might think to yourselves that we're too far away from the defensive point, but effectively what we're doing here is stopping the enemy before they even get close to the point and preventing them from adding any manpower value required for the capture. We also have a squad here on the point just in case anything slips through the cracks. The benefit of defending wide like this that is if worst case scenario happens and my entire squad get overwhelmed and taken out, I can let the other squads know that the enemy is approaching and they can start to prepare to defend from that particular side. In an ideal scenario as well, we would potentially have another small squad or a couple of guys if you can spare them, just patrolling at the back here in case the enemy managed to sneak in and airhead behind us. Also, if the guys need us to drop back on the point, we will do so to assist them, and then we can resume our positions on the flanks once we've dealt with the immediate threat.
Yeah, Gary's up east. I've got Impy on item ping. Pushing behind.
Copy. Can we please get some Garys out west?
Let's push up through this cornfield, boys.
It's all pretty clear here.
Kevo's coming in with a supply truck.
Garrison out east in.
Other side of this building, I think.
Yeah, he's down. Alright, boys, we're gonna have to get back into the point. We're gonna have to get back into the point.
Left.
I'm switching around. I'm gonna come around the front of our point. Fucking
Yeah, no problem.
Cool,
I'm
some
lacking some
bullshit.
nodes, so can I get a
Fire
confirmation
back towards
Got this build?
this way.
So just a quick example there of us operating on the flanks away from the point and then coming back to assist when needed. A couple of things to bear in mind with this is that there will be times when nothing is going on your side of the map. If you're a defensive squad, avoid the temptation to spawn on an attacking garrison when it goes up, just for a bit of action. Chances are as soon as you leave, the enemy will walk straight into the defensive point and beat you to the cap. If you're nominating yourself as a defensive squad, make sure you stay on defense. That brings us to the next chapter of combining sector control and garrison placement. So we've learnt what sector control is and we've learnt how to build a garrison. But how can we combine the two to give us an even greater success rate of defending? Firstly, let's start by looking at garrison placement. More often than not, when I found myself in a public match, players often think that one garrison directly on the point is enough. I can categorically tell you that it's not. Once again, all it takes is one well-placed bombing run and your squad will be frantically running from HQ trying to get back into the point. Don't get me wrong, it definitely helps having a garrison on the point, but it shouldn't be solely relied upon. We need to establish several backup garrisons around the point so that should the one on the point fall, we can get back and defend as quickly as possible. Here's an example of what I mean. First thing I want to look at here is the fact that we have a garrison near the point but not directly on it. This is to ensure it has less risk of being taken out with a well-placed bombing run. Secondly, look how many garrisons we've got up around the point. This gives us security in the fact that we can afford to lose one or two and still be in a reasonable position. Now, one thing worth noticing is that when the enemy capture a point, every spawn point within these two rows will be lost. However, if you look closely, you can see that this garrison has been carefully placed into the third row, meaning that if we do lose the point and we lose this section, then this garrison will remain active, giving our offensive squads a chance at capping the point back. You can see that this garrison next to it, however, will be lost as it's in the first two sectors. So in hindsight, this would have been better to have placed slightly back so that if the section was lost, it would remain active, giving our offensive squads two options to choose from. Now, alongside all of our garrisons, you'll notice that we've got plenty of outposts up as well. And this is where it can tie in with sector control. We can effectively use all of these spawn points as beacons as to know where the enemy are coming from. If we look back in episode 2, I explained that when the enemy got close to a spawn point, it begins to light up red. This can be an excellent indicator to all of our squads to get a greater understanding of where the enemy may be approaching from. So you can see from this particular example, the enemy are approaching from the northeast side as this garrison is lit up. And in this example, you can see the threat is approaching from the west. So you can see how garrison placement and sector control go hand in hand. Good garrison placement is going to make your job controlling the sector far more easier, and good sector control is going to allow you to keep up more garrisons around the point. So with that said, let's move on to the next chapter in this video on building defences. As we progress with this section, I'm sure all you keen engineers will be chomping at the bit, but if there is anything I've missed, then please do let me know in the comment section below. I very rarely play engineer, and when I do, it is purely to build nodes. However, one of the most important roles the engineer provides is the ability to build defences around the sector. These range from bunkers and barricades to Belgian gates and barbed wire. In order to build defences, we still need to work as a squad. We'll need plenty of supplies to allow us to build, and this is where supply drops from command or supply truck runs are far better suited for us, as they'll provide more supplies allowing us to build a wide range of defences. We'll also need teammates to help us build. We could try and do it by ourselves, but it will take longer to build and upgrade structures. So the old saying of many hands make light work rings true. We'll also need squad members keeping the enemy occupied, giving us more time to build it up. This is when we may tactically lose the current point, knowing that we had no intention of fully defending it, but in the meantime it's allowed us to build up Fort Knox on the next defensive sector. Now, depending on how much time and supplies you have, will determine how you build. For example, this particular scenario, our team did a great job at keeping the enemy occupied on the bridge, preventing them from getting close to the point. We had lots of supply truck runs coming and going, and as a result of that we were able to build a fort to pretty much keep the enemy out completely. However, more often than not, you won't be so lucky, and you may have limited supplies or time before the enemy reach you. This is when map skills allow you to build defences that don't necessarily keep the enemy out, but they can be used to block off the main entry points or funnel them into a particular area that makes it easier to defend. I can't tell you how to do this because there are too many variables and different points and different maps. But if you do take the engineer role, liaise with your squad leader so they can request what you need from command. Ask squad members to help you build if need be, and even better, communicate with other blueberries such as support players or other engineers in proxy chat. And between you all, you can establish a well thought out defensive position.
It's where you get the holy milk from.
Bro, why Moses? That guy was so ugly he made a sea dry.
You got one more, man. Can you angle it?
Big Capel, the video that I made of you and Major Issues describes this game completely. You build up the entire point in order for it to like be
nothing
used.
happens.
And then nothing.
Oh, damn it again.
Mate, you should see this point. It's fucking beautiful. It's fucking beautiful.
It is very cool.
But as I said, I'm not going to spend too long on here just because I'm not an engineer and I don't know all the ins and outs, but that's hopefully going to give you a bit more of an insight as to how defences work. And with that, it brings us to our final chapter of this video, squad tactics in and around the point. So let's start with tactics within the point. As a general rule of thumb, we're usually going to want to leave guys such as our MG to get set up in position and lay down fire on approaching enemies.
Absolutely scrumdiddlyumptious.
Our engineer, as explained in the previous chapter.
Hex.
And our support class to provide supplies for garrisons and defences.
Oh yeah, sorry, here we go. Sorry.
Does anybody have any
Bear in mind that this is not a set rule or set in stone that you should always follow. The biggest thing is to listen to your squad lead and go wherever they tell you to. On the outside of the point, we're likely to have more of our assault and auto rifleman classes.
Back here, I think. Oh, they've dropped
Garrison on point?
He's gonna get them.
I'm gonna.
Alongside our AT to take out any tanks before they get close.
Probably in 10 seconds.
Okay, just wait here with me, boys. The rest of you boys.
Our squad leader may choose to alternate between going in the point and working outside the point as they see fit.
Yeah, he's down.
Got this build.
This way.
Our guys in the point should be dealing with any immediate threats that slip through the cracks, whilst our guys on the outside will be freeing up friendly garrisons and disrupting enemy movements. Here's an example of how half our squad cleared a friendly garrison outside the point and took down an enemy OP, whilst the rest of the squad were busy defending enemies that had made it inside the point.
Careful, they're coming in close to the off that Gary.
Yeah.
Right in front.
Yeah, they're right on the Gary.
Yeah. Going right side.
Yeah, got two of them.
Nice. Got the third.
Nice.
Great work, Crispy.
Soviets are doing a fitty job. They've got the Jeep out doing dress.
Yeah, they're right on the Gary.
Yeah. Going right side.
I've got their
Oh,
AP.
they know
Their
where
AP.
the Garrison is.
Yeah, I've got their AP.
Ah, great work, great work, great work.
And finally, think about where you're positioned and what weapons suit best. For example, if playing as AT, then it's probably best to use rockets than a satchel, as if the enemy knows you've satcheled them and they drive straight into the defensive point, you're not going to be very popular and you'll likely be taking a 2-hour nap from the game because you killed too many friendlies. If you're defending inside the point, chances are you're going to encounter close quarter combat, so it might be best to use SMGs in place of rifles. And vice versa, whilst on the outside, you may wish to use rifles that are better for that long distance range. Anyway boys, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Blueberry Guide. As always, I hope you found the video useful, and I hope it's given you a greater understanding of advanced defense tactics. Make sure you catch episode 5 where we focus on advanced offense, and if you have enjoyed the video, give it a like and please subscribe to the channel. Until then, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care.